Thank you very much. That's a very good question. One, I'm very glad to have attended this the law review dissemination workshop held earlier today. In my capacity as country director, it's always very nice to see advancement in our work in the Maldives. As you are aware, UNFPA works in three critical areas. One is to, and we call it three transformative results for UNFPA. And these are the three areas we work in 150 countries and territories around the world. We seek to ensure that family planning and reproductive commodities are available to everybody as a right based. We seek to ensure that every mother or every pregnant woman can deliver safely, but also finally our third strategic result is to end gender-based violence in every country and territory. We've done critically well in two of these areas, but gender-based violence becomes an area where we need critical improvement all over the world. Maldives being a critical country as well. In Maldives, 1 in 3 women have suffered gender-based violence in their lifetime. And more interesting, for the want of another word, is that 1 in 4 married women have suffered violence from an intimate partner, meaning that women go through violence in their homes, oftentimes in the hands of the person they profess to love. And I think that is a very critical area that we must do more and work. On this law review, and you will see in different countries and continents, there are different pathways to addressing gender-based violence. It can be complicated, it's holistic. I just described the situation where your intimate partner, the person you love, is violating or abusing a woman. One is that we seek to have prevention. How do we do that? We speak to people, we advocate, and to see that we stop this act, we close the tap. The second is that we have care, meaning that we have shelters, we have services, we have clinical management of rape, oftentimes because rape is also a form of violence. We work with hospitals to be able to give necessary attention to victims. We have counseling and psychosocial support. The other is about law and response, the legal response, meaning that violence should be criminalized and people should suffer the consequences of abuse. In many countries, assault, for example, is a crime. But when it comes to assault by an intimate partner, we find a way of, not dealing with it because, and there are many reasons. So we really believe that the law must also take its course. And so the path we're doing, we are attended today, is addressing that legal component. And so it's an area we work, it's an area we intend to strengthen our work with the government and people of Maldives to ensure that existing laws have impact in implementation, but also laws that contradict and violate the rights of women, because oftentimes in our bid to make good laws, we oftentimes forget, that some laws exist. So oftentimes there are laws that contradict themselves in the protection of women. There are laws that might not necessarily be intended to deny women access to services and justice, but that happens to be the case. So this review was to actually look at all laws in Maldives, at least most, that are supposed to be for gender equality and women's empowerment, but laws that also might prevent the commitment of Maldives to international conventions, including the Sustainable Development Goals, and that seeks for gender equality and the protection of women, to ensure that we work with government and look at these laws. What are the impediments to access? What are the impediments to services? What are the components of these laws that might be doing what we do not want to do? And to ensure that these laws, one, can be mutually reinforcing, but also to ensure that we remove the impediments to gender equality and women's empowerment. So that's the purpose of this review and this validation and engagement. I wouldn't say validation, engagement, consultation. And I'm really hopeful that this kickstarts a national effort to look at laws that actually strengthen the response to gender-based violence. Okay, so that's a question that I find very interesting, and I would agree here. I have a bias.
Yeah.
And one, I'm a lawyer, and I've seen what laws do, and laws are great, right? And the laws we make in countries come from our culture. So there's a socio, would I say, socio-political nuance to legislation and culture, or socio-cultural. It gets political later, but it's a socio-cultural nuance to laws. But when it comes to violence against women, I don't want to use the word complicated, but it carries a lot of challenges. And this is so rather, by the time we start speaking of laws and responding and holding perpetrators accountable, the woman has already suffered violence multiple times, oftentimes. And I don't want to even begin to speak to the challenges of justice. You know, justice, while a person who committed rape might go to jail, but it doesn't remove the fact that that woman has gone through hardship, dignity, indignity, suffering, physical harm and injury, a feeling of worthlessness in many cases, stigma and discrimination in society, just to mention a few of the challenges of a woman who's gone through violence. So that is not my aim and end goal. And despite the many legislations we have as well, you know, we are still struggling to tick the needle in violence. So I really believe that we need to work to strengthen this legislation and to make sure that we have enforcement strategies that make sense. When I say make sense, when we need to make laws that we can enforce and implement, and we need to hold policymakers accountable to the laws and legislations that happen in countries. So basically, if we have a domestic violence act, like a lot of countries are in Maldives, but the question is, when we begin to try these cases, we see police officers reluctant to arrest perpetrators of violence. We see issues around magistrates or judges, you know, coming up with different reasons why they cannot try a case. We see systems that are not optimized to respond to these issues. For example, rape is a criminal offense. So basically, the burden of proof for rape in the court is proven beyond reasonable doubt. So that means that a person who is accused of rape is presumed guilty. In Maldives, we pick our laws majorly from common law, is presumed innocent until the prosecutor can prove beyond reasonable doubt to the court that the person is guilty. Now, I'll just give you a few things that would need. You need strong evidence that the person committed the rape. How do you prove that a husband or an intimate partner, you know, committed rape, when oftentimes the woman is vilified, stigmatized? Culture did not make her go to the police. When she went to the police, good evidence was not collected. She went to the health facility. She's stigmatized. She cannot engage. Nobody is taking samples of swabs or this. So the system is actually not optimized to respond to these needs legally. So one of the things we need to do is to speak to advocacy and speak to duty bearers, from the healthcare worker to the lawmaker to the judge to the police system, to actually relate with them, create more awareness, and create accountability systems to make them respond to that. The second thing, and I'm also biased towards prevention, I do not want any woman or any girl child to ever suffer violence. So meaning that, how do we do that? We need to re-engineer our thinking as societies. We must have zero tolerance for violence, meaning that you and I and everybody on the streets must become gatekeepers for the protection of the girl child and the woman. So we need to do more in advocacy, more in awareness, more work in schools. You know, we need to catch them young. The culture that accepts violence And in many countries also, many women believe it's okay for their spouses to hit them if they burn food, if so that zero tolerance means that we need to re-engineer our education system by having comprehensive sexual education that speaks to the rights of women and advances gender equality. We need to speak through our gatekeepers everywhere. We have religious leaders, we have community leaders. We need to champion this and we need to engage them. The conversation has to move beyond being around women. It has to engage men and boys. 50% of Maldives is also men, and at the minimum. So we need to speak to and make everybody feel a sense of responsibility to ending violence. We need to make sure that the husband must treat the wife with respect and not make her a punching bag. We need to let people know, our society needs to understand and agree that disputes and conflicts are normal in life, but it can be resolved through peaceful means of conversation and not by punches and blows. We don't want Evander Holyfield or Muhammad Ali's in the home setting. That's not Muhammad Ali should come from the boxing ring in the stadium and not on the home front. So these are a massive campaign that speaks to prevention is very necessary, and I think that will go a long way in addressing gender-based violence in Maldives and around the world. Finally, I've spoken about the legal reform and prevention. We need to do more to care, because our effort at prevention is long-term. It would not change suddenly. We've had decades, centuries of accepting violence as culture. We understand that behavioral change will not happen immediately. It takes time for our norms and culture and ways to change. In that moment, we need to bridge the gap and provide more care for women, especially the most vulnerable who have gone through violence. We need to provide opportunities. We need to ask ourselves questions. Oftentimes, when a woman is violated, we have systems that take the woman and her kids away from the house, oftentimes putting them in more vulnerable situations because they might be anywhere on the street. The question we must ask ourselves is that what should happen? The home should be a place of protection and a place of suffering. So we need to have a general social protection system that really, really responds to the needs of Maldivians. And I'm proud to say UNFPA is actively engaged across the board to support Maldives in this way. We're working with the Ministry of Gender on an app, that creates awareness, application where young people, we know that most Maldivians are online these days, where we can be able to change behavior, shelter, support is there. But we'll seek to intensify our work on prevention and awareness as well. It's important to work on education. We cannot underestimate the impact of education in school and out of school. And I believe these will be catalytic so that the next generation or the immediate generation of Maldivians have zero tolerance for violence against women. So UNFPA Maldives continue to work with governments, society and partners to majorly work on advocacy and education. It's very key. I spoke to prevention efforts. So we're working with some series of videos with the Ministry of Women to actually promote life skill education. And what do I mean by life skill? It's important for us to reinforce values that prevent violence, reinforce the value of humanity, the value of human beings, and how people can protect themselves. So we'll be launching a series of videos with the ministry and to ensure that this is distributed and can be consumed by the entire population. We'll continue to work to seek advocacy platforms and effort to do this. We would work around life skill education. Some call it comprehensive health education, comprehensive sexuality education. To me, it's about the education that empowers the young person and a whole life cycle approach to understand themselves, respect their body, take care of themselves, but also value the next person, the other person, and ensure that we serve as protectors of ourselves. So this, for me, is a major starting point, and it's an immediate priority in UNFPA the Maldives. And I'm positive that with this, with getting a whole life approach, like I've said, holistic approach, with government, with society, with partners, with communities, essentially, with women and men, girls and boys, we will begin to move the needle on violence against women in the Maldives. And I'm so sure that by the time we're having this conversation in a few years, we must have progressed from where we are today, and also ensure that we treat every human being as a human.